In this video, I want to talk to you about Xbox hackers. And if you're now thinking, oh god, Xbox hackers, what am I supposed to do with that nonsense? Then by the end of the video, you'll probably be very surprised to find that you can definitely get something out of this, and you'll be amazed at how intelligent hackers are. And this will probably change your image of hackers forever. I was surprised myself when I heard that Xbox hackers, in America I think it was, between the ages of 14 and early 24, the entire I don't even remember what they were called back then. I think it was NATO. And they also hacked Microsoft. And then another big gaming company, was it even EA, I think. So in any case, they were able to hack them. And it all started, I'll talk about EA now, so with this game developer, EA. They then thought about how they could replicate these consoles, the gaming laptops, and then they also successfully hacked Microsoft, got the passwords, tested them using the classic dictionary method, and actually managed to get into numerous networks. And that already shows at this point just how weak the infrastructure and the entire system of Microsoft, EA, and countless other companies were. Disney was involved too, I think, that these hackers were actually able to get into the system just by trying out a few passwords. And then the entire blueprint for the new Xbox. Xbox 1998, I think, or at least the early 2000s, they were able to get their hands on the plans and actually rebuild the Xbox themselves and successfully sell it on eBay for more or less 100 euros. Maybe it was even 1,000, I'm not exactly sure. And yes, it goes even further. These Xbox hackers were so well connected with each other that they met up in person and exchanged ideas, pushing each other forward. Financially, things were going really well. They could eat at the best restaurants, they had great friends, great girlfriends, and they were living a good life. No one ever really thought about tracking them down or even pursuing them. Maybe that's not the right word. It just didn't work at all to find out who they were. One of them was living in Australia, another in the UK, and another in Canada, but eventually the scam was uncovered. It happened when a friend from Canada wanted to meet up with the friend from Australia, I think, to show him the new Xbox. He was stopped at the border, the package was inspected, and the counterfeit Xbox was discovered. I believe he ended up in prison as well, to the best of my knowledge. It's been a while since I watched the documentary, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And yes, but he definitely ended up in prison for a short time, and, well, they couldn't really do much about it. And that just shows again that the whole system, the political system and the legal system, is simply too weak to really enforce the law. You simply need a lot more evidence. But anyway, I don't really want to get into the topic of police and crime right now. I'm more interested in the Xbox hackers and their activities. So they replicated this Xbox, they replicated these gaming laptops, and they were very successful with it. And how were they able to pull all of this off so successfully without anyone noticing, neither EA nor Microsoft? They were even so cunning that they simply applied for jobs at Microsoft. One of them actually got the job, stole the Xbox or the laptop, and was then fired. And they even tried to download this data from a laptop at a trade show, probably a gaming convention. They were caught by the police and even interrogated, but they were released again. And so they were able to keep playing this game endlessly. One of them then, but he couldn't handle how things were in prison. He ended up taking his own life at the age of 24. The other one, I don't know all the details exactly, but it's also important. He actually ended up working for the authorities as a cybersecurity consultant, so he took a completely important path, a new era, so to speak. And the other one went back to his homeland, via Australia to the Czech Republic. He was actually the mastermind behind the scenes here. I was really surprised that absolutely nothing happened to him, because he was basically the genius behind all these organizations, the one who connected everyone, who got the whole thing rolling in the first place. And they couldn't pin anything on him. It was really incredible that these hackers were able to break into all kinds of systems, even those of huge companies, and that these companies even had to give in. They needed support. The firewall is too weak, the IT is too weak, they'd like to know how hackers operate, and they'd even like to hire these people so they can show them what needs to be improved. You really have to keep in mind that, in this particular case, it was actually even helpful, and perhaps even somewhat beneficial, when black hat or grey hat hackers pointed these things out to people. Yes, things were going really well for the hackers. As I said, they were making really good money, more than 1,000 euros a month, and they were living large, or at least freely, and it just kept getting better for them. But of course, they did have sleepless nights, and this money was, let's say, more or less not honestly earned. Still, they kept trying to find out more, to hack even more, like many who just can't get enough. They kept on modifying, faking, and selling Xboxes. The punishment was simply so minor compared to the damage they were able to cause. Between early 2014, maybe it was even a bit earlier than 2014, and 2024, they were able to paralyze numerous companies, break into many firms, change passwords, view the complete Xbox construction manual, and access many other documents from Microsoft. And I was truly shocked, both at Microsoft and at EA. I'm not exactly sure whether it was already called EA at that time or if it had a different name back then, but either way, it was definitely a major game developer that simply didn't have good infrastructure, whose IT was poor. Completely, yes, a bad system, I have to say. It was the same with Sony, too. Sony, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, they were hacked several times in the past. So that's definitely known at least once. And here, too, the problem was obvious, of course. Poor infrastructure, poor protection, poor antivirus, poor firewall, and poor employee training. And I don't mean the training itself. I don't want to speak badly of the employees, definitely not. What I actually mean is cybersecurity awareness, which you have to develop so that you understand how hackers think, how hackers operate, and how hackers break into systems. And that's exactly what these people didn't know. They also didn't know that hackers can be so young, that hackers are just regular students, and that hackers can network with each other so well through the dark web. That's actually how the whole story began, and I think many companies aren't aware of that either. People just think hackers are someone sitting in a basement, writing some kind of computer code, and specifically targeting a computer. These are people who are active on the darknet, the dark web, who connect with each other through forums on the darknet, who first get to know each other, who come from very different backgrounds, who got along well, and who exchanged ideas through chats. They enjoy messing with people and hacking companies. And in these chats, they wrote things like, "Hey, hacking Disney was so easy, no one would believe me. I got in right away. The password was correct, it was the same password as at EA. And I was really shocked that companies, even big companies, use such weak passwords. That big companies say, oh, well, we rely on Windows Defender, everything will be fine. And then they realize, oh, there are still vulnerabilities somewhere after all. So these Xbox hackers were definitely very successful for years. They actually received a relatively small penalty, considering the amount of damage they were able to cause. So what can you do now to benefit from this knowledge and protect yourself accordingly? Because hackers and cybercriminals always use the same methods, whether it's against companies, in this case it was actually companies, or on a political level. They had this goal. Yes, they had the goal to compromise the target right away. I think that's something we can definitely conclude. And of course, their goal was to have fun. And they did. Maybe at first they didn't intend to rebuild the Xbox, but it always kind of presented itself as an opportunity, so to speak. Because it was a lucrative business to rebuild the Xbox, to understand how the Xbox actually works, and then to auction off the Xbox themselves on eBay. It actually reached a bidding price of 20,000 euros, and there was a lawsuit, I think even from Microsoft itself, due to copyright infringements. But once again, Microsoft couldn't do anything about it. They were able to prove who it was, where they were, and yes, of course, it's difficult if someone is in Australia, although personally, I don't think it's that difficult. But for Microsoft, it apparently was hard to figure it out. At least in the beginning, it wasn't all that easy, I would say. Yes, and you can then take the appropriate security measures in advance. In this case, the obvious problem was that the hackers, like many other hackers, used the dictionary method. That means they try out different passwords. 12,345, my house. Those are classics. I don't know them all by heart, but basically, they're always included. Big 12,345 and things like my summer, etc. So passwords that are used over and over again, that are used frequently, and that are used in various combinations with each other. And if they're able to try out this password on one website, they'll also test it on another website. At this point, you can use a so-called password manager. The best one is KeePass, which I can recommend independently. NordPass isn't bad either, but I'm more of a fan of KeePass for businesses. And you can use the master password so that you basically already have a kind of victory lock on it, so to speak, if I can put it that way. And of course, you can then set really strong passwords for each of your clients, your online accounts, your social media accounts, making them correspondingly hard to crack. So much so that hackers would say, oh God, that would take a few billion years. I won't live that long. I'm not interested in that at all. Whereas, for example, my password 12345 could be cracked within just a few hours or days. And of course, you can use really good firewalls, configure Windows Defender more strictly, optimally adapt it to your company's needs. You can also use the business or elite. I'm not sure what the version is called since I specifically use the business version. You should select the business version of Windows Defender and of course also use an external business tool, whatever that may be. And with that, you're already on the right track. And of course, you can also, and I think this is the most important building block, which I've mentioned several times, train your employees so that they know not to open an email attachment unless they are 100% sure it's from one of your suppliers or an employee from another company, whatever the case may be, and they don't click on every link. From my point of view, this is the absolute weak point in all the documentaries I've seen here. Usually it's older employees who are simply too trusting, I would say. Naively click on every link and think, oh, this really is an invoice, or this really is an urgent call from the boss. He's writing by email. I have to respond to it, right? They reply, open attachments, emails, links, whatever. And in doing so, they basically invite the hackers onto their computer. Yes, and the most important thing you can actually do here is to take these security measures in advance. It was already too late, because for Microsoft and EA, it was already 5 to 12 or even 5 past 12 to take action, and at that point, Xbox World actually more or less sold it illegally, and the entire copyright was violated. The whole construction manual became public knowledge. The entire concept from Microsoft, and unfortunately also many games from EA, were made public before they were released. It might not sound interesting to you right now, but it is certainly of great interest to major computer magazines and also to other games, industry players, and competitors in this case, who can then respond accordingly. These are company secrets that have been published here, and the most important thing is that you protect yourself by following the advice I just mentioned. That way, you are definitely on the safe side, because these security measures were simply ignored by those other companies. And that's the only reason why the Xbox hackers were so successful.